Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Yaida Ford's Ward 8 Table Talk, where we discuss issues that are impactful to Ward 8 residents. Today, we're going to be discussing workforce development, one of my favorite topics, and definitely one of my top priorities in this race for Ward 8 City Council. And my guest today is Leonard Howard of Prep LLC. Leonard's a good friend of mine. Leonard is a resident of Southeast, and Leonard runs a workforce development program that specializes in a myriad of different programs, but hospitality management, construction, CDL, and they even offer mental health services. And I want to welcome Leonard to the Table Talk. Hi, Leonard.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
It's good to see you. Thank you for taking time out. I know we don't have a lot of time. Leonard also teaches at Maya Angelou Public Charter. I didn't mention that. And he's an instructor in business and finance. So he is doing distance learning with his students. And real quick, Leonard, how's the distance learning piece going for your students?
If I could be frank, it's not the best situation for our students. Our students were already kind of disengaged before the pandemic. So requiring them to log in, I probably average 2, maybe 3 students every class period. So I have a class every Thursday on Zoom or Google Hangouts. Sometimes I do FaceTime if it's easier for my students. A lot of them, hit me one-on-one because they have my personal cell phone number. They FaceTime me and ask me about something particular because we were tasked with creating packets for them to complete while they're at home. So it hasn't been the best because the students aren't engaged in the logging in every day. You have a handful. I was just talking to Silas Grant, works for Kenya, and he was asking me the same question. He was like, "How's that going?" I was like, "It's terrible." I said, "I get more kids that ask me for financial assistance. Can you assist me with this? Can you help me with that?" As opposed to them actually focusing on their distance learning activities.
And just to give the audience some context, what is the age of your students? And this is an alternative student population that you're talking about, correct?
Yeah, this is an alternative student population. So we serve students as young as 16 and as old as 20, because you age out of our program. So I like to call us the last frontier because you have, either been asked to leave or suspended or expelled from a regular high school, and you have been placed at Maya Angelou. So we do have students who this is their neighborhood school, and they are this is a neighborhood school, so they attend Maya Angelou, who have no impediments, if you will. This is just their neighborhood school, so they go here. So you have those students who are mixed in, who are, overachieving, going to college, graduating, and then you have some other students who, they missed the 11th grade, the entire 11th grade, so they're at Maya trying to turn themselves around. So we do a lot of soft skills with students who've had issues elsewhere and try to get them on the path to finish, to graduate.
Yeah, that's important work. Thank you for giving us just a snapshot into what's happening with some of our students in the distance learning piece. I want to segue this, and I wish we had more time so we can kind of stay on that. We could stay at that distance learning point for a little bit and talk about some of the challenges, but I do want to get into workforce development. So you and I've had lots of conversations about workforce development in Ward 8 and some of the concerns. And first, I just kind of want to set the landscape, workforce development. I have a client that offers construction classes at Anacostia High School. It's a trade program. And there are some pretty positive outcomes there, but it's a small program, and it's not, I don't know how much awareness is out there about it. Give us the audience a sense of your opinion on what the landscape on workforce development is like in Ward 8. What's offered, what's there for us?
Well, what I think a lot of times people consider workforce development is if someone has a job for 5 to 6 weeks and they're making $12 to $14 an hour. They've made their quota. This person, we're tackling workforce development. And to me, workforce development is sustainability. And if you're talking about a population that I have been dealing with for the past year, and before that, about 10 years, dealing with the alternative population, the have-nots, those who have had, mental and physical situations, matriculating through a big city like DC incarceration, drug use, parent incarcerated, all of those things. I think people, say, well, he was on a job site or she was on a job site for 6 weeks. That's workforce development. And it's not. It has to be sustainable growth to where a person who has gone through PTSD, like there's tons of PTSD in Ward 8. So if we can attack from the mental health piece and get to the bottom of those issues and discuss at least the mental health part, because you're talking about somebody that may be returning from incarceration who may have been in a federal penitentiary since they were 17 or 18 years old, and now they're 28 trying to return to society. So you're talking about a child who was in the belly of the beast most of their adolescent, young adult life, and now they're trying to come back to workforce. So if you start with that mental health piece of getting them reacclimated, I would say 60 to 90 days before release, and then you can start there. So workforce development to me means sustainability, that I can provide for my family, I can provide for myself, and I can become a model tax-paying citizen to where I have a job that could turn into a career, not just a 6-week work site, an 8-week work site, a 2-month situation.
Yeah, and you're mentioning that. So for what's offered now, are we seeing in Ward 8, and I know you live in Ward 7, and I know Project Empowerment is there, but I've talked to some of our returning citizens in Project Empowerment, that everybody's not eligible for that, right? So in your opinion, what are our growth points, in Ward 8? What are we not seeing, and what should we see as far as workforce development is concerned?
Well, it's good. It's people in Ward 8 who are serving Ward 8 community that are getting the job done. You have the Raymond Bells, you have your client who they're, getting kids and young adults sustainable employment. And these kids are buying homes and cars and doing these types of things. So there are some entities, doing good work in Ward 8. So what was the other part of your question? I'm sorry.
Well, and I think, let me just kind of rephrase that. McCullough Construction is the construction program I was talking about that my client at Anacostia High School that they run. But I think
familiar with that program.
Yeah, you mentioned a good point, and that was about the mental health component too. I'm just going to kind of segue back there a little bit. We see some outcomes of workforce development.
Right.
But for example, UDC, has a workforce development program that's now located at the Congress Heights School building on Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue. The medical assistance program, and just different programs that they have going. But I've talked to students from there who are not able to find work in Ward 8. When they graduate from the program, they're just not able to find an employer in the ward. And opportunities in the district, they say, pay less than opportunities like in Maryland, for example, particularly in the medical assistance field. So what do you think about the opportunities that we're offering in the ward? Is there a way that we can strengthen workforce development, I guess, in Ward 8?
I think offering companies incentives to come to Ward 8, to set up shop, to have offices in Ward 8. As we both know, there's no medical center, there's no hospital here. So that could create thousands of jobs. There could definitely be a segue program from the UDC program to the Ward 8 hospital or trauma center, because they're vastly different. We have a number of homicides here in the ward, and I think the closest hospital you have to go to Maryland. So by creating a trauma center or a hospital where some of these medical assistants and nurses could kind of segue from their UDC program into that, could be one way that we could kind of just bridge things together. And just inviting companies, incentives to come to Ward 8, come to Southeast, and invest in our people. So I was talking to my brother last night, and I made a point about the Harris Teeter on Potomac Avenue. You can tell that the majority of the employees there are residents of that neighborhood, and I'm okay with us hiring our people. I'm actually an advocate of it. If something is popping up in the neighborhood, at least give our people the opportunity to interview. We're not saying guarantee them a job, but we have to get that training in. We have to get that customer service piece. We have to get that, professionalism, how to speak to customers, conversations that are not appropriate for work while you're in the middle of work. Like there should be no reason that the Navy Yard Harris Teeter and the Potomac Avenue Harris Teeter have two different makeups. If you get what I'm saying, like, and it's strictly a customer service issue. And I speak to some of them, and I know that they live in Potomac Gardens and are from Ward 8, and they just don't have the customer service piece. So
they don't have the skills. They lack the skill set.
They lack the skill set.
And so
one of
the things you mentioned too about the hospital, and I think when we have that conversation, because we have it a lot about the fact that we don't have adequate health care in the ward, and so we experience a lot of health disparities. You brought up a major point that the hospital will also bring a lot of jobs to the Ward 7 and 8. And so that is, I think, an essential piece of advocating for the hospital. And that's something I know I haven't heard, being as one of the reasons why we want to bring the hospital, because of jobs. At least you don't hear that often from the leadership, in the ward. We definitely know that on a health basis, we know why we need it, but also for workforce development, that would be huge for Ward 7 and 8. So that's definitely one of the reasons. And I want to kind of go back into now I want to tie this back into the mental health piece. You and I had this conversation a little while ago about, if we are dealing with workforce development and mental health, that will solve a lot of the chronic unemployment and the crime, because the public safety issue, Leonard, I believe, and a part of my platform is public safety and workforce development go hand in hand. Right? So let's talk about that just for 1 minute before we close. How what is your vision, as a workforce development program creator? Tell our residents, what an ideal program would look like that would actually serve to deal with some of the mental health issues that would create stable employment, and that would help address some of the crime that we're dealing with.
Sure. So again, I as you and I have talked, and I have talked with other professionals, that yes, workforce development and public safety go hand in hand. If Jimmy is at work from 8 a.m. to 12 at night, he's going to be too tired to come home and want to knock somebody in the head or break into the Turning Natural or any of those things, because he's got to be to work the next morning at 8 o'clock. So he's trying to get home. He's trying to sleep. He's got $20 in his pocket to buy himself some dinner, to buy his daughter or son some Pampers. Those are the types of things that go hand in hand. So for me, the ideal workforce program would start with a curriculum that is centered in the meeting the person at the ground level. So you join the workforce development program, you go to 3 weeks of hardcore mental health evaluations. Like, what are some issues? Do you have a criminal background? And do you need to speak to someone about any of these traumatic issues? Have you been incarcerated? So then while we're doing those 3 weeks, we then transition into soft skills. We put together a program that evaluates your strengths. What is it that you're good at? What can you do that's really well? So once you're still doing your mental health piece, and then you're doing your survey that speaks to your strengths. We've done that before in different career settings where they evaluate your strengths and weaknesses as an employee. And then when we graduate from that, we get into a customer service piece and professional dress. How do we greet a customer? How do we take away what's going on around us before we get to work? It's been plenty of times where we've all went to work with what we've been going through for the week, and we've had to push through, push that face through. So that needs to be taught, so.
But we have the coping mechanisms, some of us, and the coping skills to deal with that at work, whereas a lot of our residents, particularly those that have experienced perpetual traumatic stress, don't necessarily have the coping mechanisms, so they tend to resort to behavioral, acting stuff out.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of these kids I service have been through worse stuff than I have been through before they were 18 than I have been in my entire 33 years of life. So once we get through the customer service piece, we get into professional dress. We have a seminar on what's professional to wear to work, what's work clothes, what's club clothes, what's, different for different settings. Gentlemen, when should we go business casual, those different types of things. And then we match you with what you believe is your strongest strength as far as workforce. So if you like working with your hands, then maybe getting you a construction job. If you like the medical profession, you go to medical assistance or nursing, or you like working with computers, the IT situation. Like, that's my ideal plan. And follow-up is also critical in workforce. Not when the person graduates your program, it's see you later, thank you for helping us make our numbers. The follow-up for at least 18 months, because anybody can relapse into something, or can become aggressive, could lose that job, not feel like they are adequate enough to work for this place. I've heard tons of stories of kids that are like, oh, this is just too much for me, or this is, I've never experienced where I've had to have so much responsibility at work. When I was at UDC teaching a marketing class, we were having a scenario where, what if you got hired at the National Stadium? What are some things that you would find ethical and unethical? Would you give your cousin that came to the game every week a free drink? Like, what if you got the responsibility of taking the money to the bank every week from all the beers that you've sold and all of those things? So teaching that ethical piece also, because I've seen so many young adults, young people lose their jobs behind making unethical decisions. So
yeah, it's a judgment call. And I think sometimes those are also things that need to be taught and focused on. So I really love the fact that that's a component of your workforce development program. And I think we are running out of time. So I would love to keep having this conversation because I think it's really critical. I think that at the end of the day, we want to focus on educating people on what workforce development is. Because certainly the externship, 6 to 8 weeks, that's one part, but there is a workforce development that means creating sustainable poverty breaking employment opportunities for residents. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And that's a good note to end on. Everybody, Leonard Howard from Prep LLC, teaching at Maya Angelou, or serving at Maya Angelou Public Charter, serving our students. So again, thank you, Leonard Howard, for joining us here today. I'm just so excited about this conversation on workforce development. And, this notion that workforce development is not just about an internship or externship, right? It's about creating sustainable employment. So we want to keep the conversation going and the education going, and develop policies that create realistic and poverty breaking opportunities for our residents. So Leonard, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Great conversation.
Yes. All right, everybody. See you next time at Yaida 4's Ward 8 Table Talk.
Yaida 4, Ward 8 Table Talk.
Creating opportunities and fighting for you.